Okay, there we go. Hello people. Let me turn on the light. It's super dark in here. BRB, guys. Wait, let me check out something first. Okay, we're good. Okay. Second. Yeah, take third. You're actually kind of okay. Hello, Smoky Games. Hello, Funny Bone, and actually, you deserve mod Funny Bone. You've been here for quite a while, and there you go. Oh boy, we got a little request already. Okay, so I was gonna wait until we got a little request so I would play an Extinction, but I guess not. Let's check it out. And by the way, how loud is the music? Okay, it's pretty good. Oh, I've seen this. I'm so confused by this. It's so weird. It's just creepy. Well, not creepy, but like, it's weird. Truly, it is your brain on drugs. I'm an idiot. 3 stars? Okay, I'll check that out immediately after I do a Smoky Games. I've played that before. Very strange. Again, like, yeah. Okay, Oh, wait, what? Wait, dude, did you update it? Dude, this looks so much better now. My last 2 brain cells during a math test. Yeah, pretty much. But dude, this is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna get this key. Okay. Dang it. Yes, it's updated. Nice. Ooh! Dang! This looks so much better now. Oh, okay. It doesn't hurt you yet. Oh, God. Okay, don't worry, Funny Bone. I will get to yours immediately after this. I looked at the comments and see you checked it out. Ooh. What? Whoa! Dude, you got a mod! Dude, we can do this. We can do this. We can get your level featured, boys, or at least rated. Whoa. Holy crap! Oh my god! Dude, we're gonna get this level featured once it's done. Holy crap. That's so cool. Okay, I'm getting this coin though. There you go. Okay. Yeah, okay, it doesn't hurt you yet. Doesn't seem like it, at least. That is so cool. Dude. Again, we're getting that featured someday. Okay, then we'll do this collab. Anyone? Okay. Oh, God. Make it longer and it's a guaranteed feature? Yeah, exactly. Especially if Molpan commented on it. Like, holy crap. Like, because I was getting Spectacle, I was kind of getting worried it would never get featured. Okay. I'm just kind of confused. That one's a weird layout. It's extremely short, but doesn't really work. Like, what? Do I gotta hit it, like, late? Yeah, kinda, but... Sorry, but that collab anyone is an instant... No. Sorry, dude. Cosmic Flame. Ooh, good layout. Oh, I saw you making this on stream. Play the free star level? Oh, I forgot. I forgot about that one. Okay, after I do, yeah, I saw you making this on stream. It's really cool. Okay, Snowy C, I will do your level after I do this level. It's apparently 3 stars, so may all flock to it. Sarcasm. Nice. Yeah! Free 9 stars! Oh! Dude, that's great. We're all gonna flock to this level. Dude, I need to share with some people that I know who play GD. I finished it and got noticed by a lot of humans. Apparently they like Leak GD. He uploaded that layout on his channel. That's pretty cool. Or Leak, I don't know, where. Yeah, cool. A lot of people commented on this. Okay, I'll check it out after I do Snowy C's level. Oh, hey. I got the, Halo robot. The totally not Halo robot. Dude. Pause mode. Pause mode. Ooh. That's pretty cool. Good idea. I don't know why I'm clapping so much, but hey, I do like the idea. Yeah. Interesting idea. That's all I really gotta say. Kinda cool. A lot of people can't. Oh yeah, I think I saw. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. No, I didn't see this. Interesting. I don't really. Okay. Oh god. Okay, that was a bit quick. 500 user coin icon is pretty cool. Okay. Hello. Sir Solitario? Solitario, I'll tell you that. I'm probably, like, you know, chopping out so bad. I will do Smokey's level to proceed to play other level. Wait, seriously? Did I say that? Sorry. Yeah, hello, how you doing? Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Solely. Yeah, I'm just gonna play this, I don't know. For a second, I was like, why'd you say ×3? But then I realized his face. I'm kind of retarded. I'm Solely. Okay, I'll call you Solely then. Coolio. Okay. I wonder if I could beat this on 144 Hz a lot easier. Yeah, really. Dang it, that one timing sucks. Because on a phone, I literally beat that on a phone. And so I was like using, so like I couldn't get past the straight fly every single time, like this. But, and so I had to get to that last timing, like, really good level. Okay, I'll check it out right now. You know what? I want to beat this. Sorry. I just kind of got addicted on it again. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna be honest with you. Okay, here you go. Home tonight. Okay. I'm streaming. You have 47 on your level? You mean like the one that I just played? That's pretty cool. Also, he's not saying anything. Ooh, oh, it's the Dance in the Moonlight again. Oh no. What? I didn't see that. Law? The law? The law will bring us home tonight. Okay, that's pretty funny. But hang on. Guys, I need to show you something. So, okay, wait, let me, get forward in the stream first. But guys, this is just something that I still need to show because it just really interests me. Also, Brutus still isn't here. But, okay, we got a request. Okay, first we got Funny Bone, but then we'll do Sully. So here, I kind of want to show this. So I believe when you search Dancing in the Moonlight right now on Google, it's a remix. It's like this cool, like, chill song that pops up. Okay, not really. Dang it! Okay, well, but here's the thing. I think this is what people think of what now in modern times when people think of Dancing in the Moonlight. I think they're referring to this song. I'm not entirely sure though. So just kind of listen to lyrics. Like, I actually might want search Doja Cat Moo on YouTube. Okay, I'll do that super quickly after I show this. Okay, so, oh hi, I heard Brutus. I heard a key press. Reaction stream. Yeah, please no. Okay, so you get the idea. Yeah, pretty nice. And then, but, dude, no joke, that's a remix. That's actually a remix of this song. That I actually heard this song before I heard about that other song. This is actually, it's a remix. Play my level PP head? No. But you'll see.
We get it almost every night.
See? Same lyrics.
When that moon gets so big and bright, it's supernatural delight. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight. Everybody here is out of sight. They don't bark and they don't.
What the actual fuck is this comment?
Keep things alive. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight.
Okay, whatever. You get the idea. It was a remix. But I heard a lip smack. I hear everything. Okay, finally, we're gonna get to searching up this and try and find your comment. This is very weird. What the actual fuck is this? Play it, please. Okay, I will play it after I check this. See if this comment is like here at like most popular, which would be pretty cool. Egg. I agree. So apparently his comment is like really high up on there. There it is. What kind of music do you listen to? Okay, well this is gonna be interesting, isn't it? Dude, GG, you have 4,000 likes. Okay, I get the idea. Okay, so I forgot to like it. I love how all of that happened. Groovy. So then we got Sponge. Just listen to the music, okay, and play. Ah! Okay, you said just listen to music, and it's like, and play. Okay, what? How do you get that coin? That's a bit difficult. Whatever. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now Sully remastered. Oh my god. Help. I'm going to assume you... Yeah, you have to do that. Okay. You should play Delta Heavy Ghost. Well, I'm not really doing YouTube things anymore, plus it takes like 15 years to load. Okay, now I'll do Infinite Zero's level. Never got any more level requests since then. Oh god. Yes, I got one from Funny Bone, so I'll do wait, did I forget to like it? No, I did. Doesn't work. Infinite Zero Year Ones is broken. Okay, I already played that. And now we got another one that's coming. Ooh. You slide under a block, idiot. Wait, what happened? Wait, groovy. Okay, sorry. You slide under the block. What? You slide under the block. What? Okay, dude. What? It just jumps me up. I'm not trying to jump there. Okay. Okay, that's cool. You go on spikes. You go on... Oh. Okay, here, let me try this again. Sorry. Okay, I'll get to Smoky Games and then Snowy's in just a second. Snowy, okay, he's pressing level. Okay. I don't think that's the most idiotic thing I could miss, to be honest. I'm sorry, but... Yeah, I'll get Smokies and Snowies. And then Finger Vortexes. Okay, LaHoy, okay, so... What? It's like just saves and beats, to be honest. What? Oh. That is super cool. But also pretty hard. Okay, you got Snowy's level. Let's just pray that it's not something weird. Okay, thanks. Smoky sounds like a very opposite of Snowy. Actually, yeah, you're right. What the heck? Yeah. Here, no. I gotta beat the Demon Gauntlet version. Because for people who don't know, this. Okay, well, Snowy said I should beat it. I guess I'll, you know, dedicate the entire stream to it. Just kidding. I'll play you guys' levels. It seemed like maybe like 5 attempts or so on this. My level will increase your IQ. Okay. Oh my. Yeah, I'm gonna do like 10 attempts. 10 attempts. Deal? If I beat it by some insane, like, logic, then sure. Yeah. Okay, yeah, another level. Funny Bone. Okay, Jesus. You'll be right back. Disable smoke. No! I got disable smoke key. So now he's disabled. What if you beat sidestep? Yeah, exactly. So everybody shut up. No! Everybody shut up so I stop wanting to read the chat. Wow, I agree. Yeetus, self-delete us. Poo. Ah! Dude, this sucks. I really want to bro. Is that what I said? Also, second to last attempt. I want James to read the B-movie script while screaming. No. Okay, last attempt. Yeah, same. Oh, crap. Okay, everybody shut up. That's my last attempt. Nope. Okay, yeah. XD. Oh no. Wait.
My Little Pony! My Little Pony! Ah! My Little
Wait, bug?
My Little
Bug?
Pony! Ah!
I'm holding down! Guys, help.
My Little Pony! Ah!
Also sick mouse. Okay, don't want to flex on mouse up. Okay, that's interesting. Then we have... Yeah, it did really increase my IQ. Sync test. Sounds interesting. That's close.
That's what's called a burr moment.
Yes. Tainted. Okay, that's pretty good. And then we got Elegant got the tube with the Super Mario World sign at the start of a Super Mario Maker 2 level. Don't ask how I know that. Okay, what? Okay, that effect is really tripping me out. What the heck? That effect in the corner is so cool. It was probably just the best thing around with rotate triggers and just figuring out what you can do with it. You know? Oh my god. Okay, we got so many requests now. What happened? What? I know. I'll play your level in just a second here. Something weird is happening. Oh shit, I forgot to turn off display capture. Sorry guys. Stream looked really shitty for a while. Okay, here we go. Okay, hello, you know. Okay, so now I do, now I do... Yeah, now I do Funny Bones level. Okay, now we're back, boys. Oh my god. Okay, so now we got challenge. What? Okay, here we go. I really want to bro.
Yeah, I want a bro too.
What? How do you do this?
What?
Trying to figure out what the heck this level. Oh, that's cool.
He might have come back. I don't know. Yeah, and my inner burrito now noise.
Your inner burrito noise? What?
Yeah, I ate burritos and now my stomach is like.
Oh, so difficult. Okay, now we got GD Beast and then finally Boktur, or however you say it.
I feel pretty good actually.
Okay, then wait. He keeps sending different IDs. Oh my god, I thought he was spamming the same ID. Boss fight. Oh, read description. Read description. Oh god. Boss is at the end. Okay, the boss is at the end. Dang it. Okay.
My bad. Hey. Look at it.
Look at what? Look at what? Your mic cut off.
Grease.
Look at Grease? Okay.
Oh no.
Okay, you're playing Craft Mine. Okay.
Oh no. Oh, here we are. Gotta render everything in. There we go.
Bruh.
Look at the world.
1 second. I'm, playing GD level quest. Oh! Ah! Okay, go. No, okay. Okay. That's pretty cool. So now I got a bunch of level requests from Boktur. Got Wave Challenge.
You know what, I'm gonna play some GD.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Oh. Jesus. This is a bit difficult. Yeah, okay. Hello? It's so loud! Why did that happen? Ah! My ears! Ah! Okay. Gint. This is a cool layout. Can I copy the next ID now? Okay. What?
Oink.
Oink. Okay. Okay. Oh my god. What is happening?
Yes.
Yeah, what's happening?
What do you mean?
Like, in my chat. It's just going insane.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I give up. Here, I need to quickly play these levels. Apparently you updated the level. Okay, dude. So what is this one? Okay, I'm just gonna quickly play through these. I'm not really gonna check out too many, them very quickly because I'm getting a lot of requests. I'm getting to the point where I'm getting so many requests I may have to, pick randomly, you know? Well, not really, but I mean, it's about to happen, to be honest.
Bruh. I wish I could save that, but I don't really do level requests that often anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Or to stream GD.
Bro.
Since I got my new graphics card,
Okay. Here's Funny Bone.
I'll be able to do it now.
Oh, I already did this. Okay, then we got Rin. Don't forget about Rin. Oh my god! No, he decorated it!
What?
Holy crap!
What?
Dude, he decorated my Mr. Blue Sky layout. Also, he found a song from Newgrounds, actually. It's really crappy, but holy, not the decoration, but the song. The song the MIDI is really crappy. Hang on. I need to figure out what
Nice decoration.
I know, it's really good. Okay, guys, I need to get the actual song in here. Wait, what? Okay, isn't it here? There it is. Now this is America. Okay, so 778. Prue. 778. Let's hope I have this on, yeah. Yeah, I have it. I have it. Holy crap. Guys, we're going to play this legit. I'm probably going to get copyright checked. Where? Okay, it's a bit off sync. It's a bit off sync. Let's get it synced up. I think I just kind of had it 0-0. Oops. I did not mean to take that screenshot.
That is kooky.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. For real, boys. This is so cool. I love this. I love how there's my icons there, too. This is so amazing. Okay. Dude, this decoration is remarkable. I love it. Ooh, I like that effect. Holy crap. This looks so cool, dude.
I could assume so.
Okay, so guys, sorry that I'm not getting to all these requests because I just want to see where the decoration ends. I feel like my only complaint is it's so laggy because I have such a bad computer. Oh, okay, that's a bug. But that's on my part. But I feel like my only complaint is it's so laggy. It's running at like 60 FPS down to 144 hertz. Okay, never mind. But whatever. It's now getting a lot better, but okay, never mind. It goes way down at this part. Oh, come on. Okay, that's all on my part, though, because I suck at layouts. Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, you updated it. Okay.
My Little Pony.
Oh, yeah, bug fix. Okay.
Pony.
Time to gain IQ.
My Little Pony.
Oh! Holy crap! 4 FPS 3! What?
What?
My game went down to 3 FPS. Okay, hi.
I knew what you were supposed to get.
Okay. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna do your levels very shortly. Sorry for, taking all that long time. So yeah, I'll do this. Updated this level. Okay, oh, sweet mother of Jesus. Okay. My sister got mad. She turned off the PC. F. You guys watch Spider-Man Far From Home yet? Is
I have.
that the one that's like the cartoony look?
It's the new one.
Let me double check
I like
if I've seen it because I don't even remember. Okay. Is it the one with like the... Is it a different one? No, this is like the same one as like, this is like in the same style of like, whatchamacallit, of, Homecoming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I haven't seen it yet, sorry. I did watch the other one, it was kind of different. Hello, okay, hello Slide GD, how you doing? Okay, how? I just need to see what happens. Wait, what? Wait!
What?
I just realized that a normal portal just turned me upside. Okay, a normal gravity portal just turned me upside down. This is beyond science. Okay, then I do this. Okay, you updated that level. Okay, I gotta play this. Oh, okay, I did it. And then we got this, and then we got Mr. Beast, and not Mr. Beast, not Mr. Beast. No, GD Beast. Huh. Okay, that's the same level. And then we got GD Beast, Mr. Beast.
Maybe, what if it was actually him?
Yeah.
Mr.
Mr. Beast, he's a cool beast, Mr. Beast.
I really wish I could still play that sound.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, I'm gonna sync it up to the dialogue. Mr. Beast, I can't do it. Okay, Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast, it's a cool beast. I hate it.
What makes it so good?
Yeah. Okay, Ren. Oh, I already played this. Hold up. Gmod? I'm not playing Gmod. Play my levels, JK, they're trash. Okay. I mean, what is the profile? What? Okay. Sorry, I'm not gonna play Gmod, sorry. I do have it, but...
Gary's mod?
Yeah. I'm not gonna play that.
Too, but I have barely ever played it.
Yeah, funny enough, it was the first game I got on Steam. I don't know why. I'm not gonna play it, sorry. Yeah. Wait, what the heck? I just realized this looks really good. Whoa! Whoa! This is some really good decoration. I just kind of glossed over it like it was nothing, but like... This is really cool. Okay, bugs. Sorry, that's something with my PC. If you send me levels with, like, moving objects that you land on, for some reason, sometimes it just gets thrown up in the air. It makes no sense. Lag. Okay. Okay, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna check it out because you told me not to. Disobeying.
What?
Challenge 1. Since he only has 3 levels, we'll play for them all. Okay, no. Hey, of course I got 68 and not 69. Oh, this is some good decoration. I kind of like the shadow effect you got going on there. It's not really decoration, but, you know, it looks pretty cool. Oh, what is it called? Challenge 2. Okay, then we got Air Savage. Please friend me? Okay, I'll friend you. Hashtag Levolution is gay. That was like, Levolution was like ages ago. Is it still going on?
I really hope not.
Yeah, exactly. Air Savage. Okay, yeah. This is really cool. Holy crap. Wow, this looks really good. Ooh! Nice transition. Dude, this looks amazing. I love this like paint aesthetic in this like paint aesthetic. And this one was like kind of like covered in paint. It kind of looks like different colors. Ooh! It's called this. I don't know how, ooh!
I don't know why, but every time I hear that sound, that's what I think of.
I know. Dude, this is a great level. Chill. I agree. Oh, that was fast. Okay. Good sound effects? Yes, indeed. Wait, guys. Guys, you need to see the beauty of, okay, I'm about to beat it. Here we go. For Pete. Who's Pete? It says for Pete at the end. I don't have no clue who Pete is, but okay, he's probably a nice dude.
You.
What if it's who? That supports hashtag Levolution. I swear I don't. Okay, time to play these. Robot Madness. Oh, okay. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. Okay. I just died on Robot Serial Madness. Pete the Dragon? Okay. Okay, I need to friend you, I forgot. GDB 198. Read the description, it tells you who Pete is. Oh, okay. Okay, inspired by Pete the Dragon. Okay, 3-star. Okay, I'll rate it that. Holy crap, that was an amazing level. Wait, how many downloads does this have? 37! That's so little! This guy has the same wave as me.
Roar, I am.
Cool.
I don't even know what sound I just made. Whoa. I heard scary.
R/I had a stroke be like. Okay, guys, though, I gotta show you this epic. Okay. Please rate 1 star. Okay. It's a very old level. Oh, thanks. He's hit me Bloodbath. I kind of can't rate it 1 star because it's featured. Your mic gets cut off if you were gonna say something. It's like,
Stay consistent on it.
what? Again, your mic cut off.
I don't play the game enough that I actually can get consistent in anything.
Okay. Here we go, guys. We need to watch this on stream, dude. We're gonna watch Chocolate Boy Obsession on stream. Entire 5 minutes.
When I was a boy, I had a favourite boy.
It's from stream XD. Yeah, pretty much. Here we go, boys. We're gonna watch this. It's from like
It was
2016.
when my mum made boy. Oh, I
Now
love
beat Bloodbath. No!
boy. My mum.
No! No!
If there's any left over at the end of the day, you can take some to school tomorrow to have at playtime, or at lunchtime, or at playtime, or at play lunch. So I used to go to school with a piece of chocolate boy in my little box, and I'd be walking to school in my little box. And I'd get to school, and it would be playtime.
Jet, you should react to Goblin Slayer episode 1. Is that like some like shitty like anime I'm calling it? The actual fuck is this? What? Yeah, it's anime, I call it. Wait, captions.
I'm bored.
Gonna get it. Yeah. Yeah.
But the forces are watching.
Well,
I don't think he knows how to eat food. I mean, Goblin Slayer abridged on YouTube. Okay. Goblin Slayer abridged. Is this what you're talking about? It's still some shitty anime because I'm fucking done with life if it is. Yeah. Okay, got it. Still, I'm not gonna probably do that on stream. I don't even know.
I love my mum's
Sorry.
chocolate boy. Yes. And I went to bed.
Yes.
And I was my mum's chocolate boy. Yes. And I
Yes.
went to bed, and I was fast asleep. And then in the
Wait,
middle of the
captions.
night, I
Why are
woke up
captions
and I
on?
thought, chocolate boy. Maybe I could go downstairs.
It's actually funny.
and look at
Shut up.
Oh
it. No one would know. So
Yeah,
I got
well,
up out of the bed, along the passage.
I think I'm deaf now.
Careful
You're
not
what?
to tread
You're what?
I think I'm deaf.
Deaf?
Yeah.
Great.
on the creaky floorboard outside Mum and Dad's bedroom because if they wake up and find me, I'll be in big trouble. So really quiet. Are they still asleep? Yes. Okay. Along the passage, downstairs, into the kitchen. Open the cupboard and take it out. Just have.
Hang on 1 second. I do wanna figure out something if I could like add like a bruh.
No way. Really?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh god. Jesus.
Okay, so here's the idea. So if I can hide. Yeah, this is scene 2. This is scene bro. It's a show plus hide minus. Okay, so now what happens is I can mute myself by pressing minus on the numpad. No.
Oh man. Are you sure?
Yeah, so dude, so this is like a quick mute. So like, can I even do it here? Yes, I can. And do I have like a BRB image? No? Okay. Wait, do I? No, what type of image is that?
Ah, la la la.
Look at this! It just I forgot I added this. Minecraft is Minecraft is life, Minecraft is love. I think you have that in reverse. Oh, okay. Sorry. I haven't really been paying attention to level requests. I'm kind of retarded.
He's been looking at the Michael Rosen video. This a billion times.
More interesting in level requests, totally not like.
Have a little look at it.
Okay, here we go. Time to actually get back to level requests. So here is this preview. This sounds interesting. Ooh, I like it. Dude, this is super cool. Oh jeez, okay, it's a bit tight. Ooh. Oh jeez, what? Okay. That is super cool, but I have a few more level quests to get to. I might play that later, who even knows. Pumped up clicks. It's like, oh. Are you ready? No. Oh, Jesus. Okay. That's interesting. Then we got this. We got... Try mine? Okay, I will. After this. This is actually pretty cool. I like it. Oh, okay, that's it. I didn't even notice the progress bar was so short. JP just do challenge. Oh, Jesus Christ. No. Oh my god. How the frick? Minecraft is okay, it's Minecraft is like backwards, okay. I do agree though. That kind of sounded like I didn't agree, but I 100% agree. Minecraft is love, Minecraft is life. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I'm at 144 Earth and I can't even do this. Oh! Okay, we got one from there. Okay, Nogger. I don't want to say that. Again. Oh, God. Why? Why? No. No. Foo? Oof! Foo? Sorry, that was kind of cringe. Someone said it in chat. Someone said it in chat. I'm sorry, I had to say it! Also, I think the reason why I got so many downloads is because you literally called it exactly like a featured level. Which is completely different. Oh, Jesus. Dang it, I keep doing display capture. I'm such an idiot. Okay, sorry guys. I'm kind of... I keep keeping display capture on, sorry. Cringe. Backwards. Okay, did I play this? No. Okay, it's Zodiac. It's literally Zodiac. It's literally... Okay.
Bruh.
I'm not even happy. You know bruh when bruh.
Yeah.
Bruh. Easy,
What?
demon.
Really?
Wait, did I unmute myself? Okay, good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Jesus Christ. This is so hard. Yes. I will do yours. Eshan Carmen? I guess is how you'd say it. My level preview.
What is that?
What is what? That
My
super
name's
shaky.
showing me something.
Oh, okay.
Like a bunch of people in like dinosaur suits just running.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Hmm. Is it like that brown dinosaur, like T-Rex suit?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Oh, one sec. Oh my god.
Okay, that's pretty good. I don't know why I didn't comment at all, probably because I was told about dinosaur, a bunch of dudes and dinosaur okay, hi. Here is this. This is cool.
Gotta time that. That's crazy.
No. What? Okay. Good loading times. It's pretty interesting. I didn't even know World Revolving Remix existed on Newgrounds. So that's pretty neat.
Rar.
No.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Did I play this? Yeah, that's one I just played. Okay, then we got another request from Sully. Another interesting song that I haven't heard of. Okay. Wait, hang on, hold up. Heck yeah. No, dude, Barfly. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna do it as fast as possible. Damn, there. Also, great name! Good level.
That is some very fast spam on your stream.
Yes, indeed. I love how I'm between level request and discount play my own layouts. I don't know.
Nose.
Anyway, why did I make this? I forgot it said that. Anyway. The creator. Okay. Whoa.
What was that sound?
Go back. No. Stop. Ah. Oh. 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 It's really cool. It's cool. OMG. End level stream. End level?
Yeah. End levels live.
Wait. Yeah.
Now.
That's pretty epic. Wait, what? No. No. I don't see it. Is
What?
he... Did he have, like, a second channel? Did he, like, delete his channel or something?
I don't know. His name is End.
Oh. Yeah, so his main channel end level is, like... done, right?
I don't know. He uploads stuff on an account called End.
It's called end. Okay. Yeah, I can't really find it. Yeah, searching up end just gives Avengers Endgame ending explained, and then end necessary death official video and stuff like that. About I sort my channel. End level hearted my comments in his preview video. That's pretty cool. Oh, there he is.
What's the title so I can make sure you're looking at the right thing?
Yeah. 1 second, let me switch to display capture and hopefully be able to switch back to normal one. This one. Okay. On stream you'll see it. I mean, like I said, he was live, so... It's called 666. Bruh. Dude, imagine if, bruh. Okay, this time I will in fact switch back. Here we go. Window capture and then take off display capture. We're good. Finally decided to switch back. Okay. Rip God Eater? Wait, what?
Do you not hear about God Eater literally being off the servers?
Oh shit.
That happened like at least 2 weeks ago.
Wow, I suck.
I don't know why though.
Rip the nightmare. I don't think so. It is cool. Whoa. This is really cool. Oh, that's the dash orb there. Dude, this is a really unknown level. Wait, is this yours? Yeah, it is yours. Holy crap. Dude, you're really good at it. You're a really good creator. Dude, this is really fun, too. Dude, this totally deserves to be at least rated. Okay, that's a bit annoying, though. I've heard a song before. Kinda cool. Here's my level. Yeah, I said! What? I never said it wasn't. I can't beat OMG pussy anti-OMG. Okay, I just realized I just said that. But yeah, it's a bad level. But this is a great level. This is amazing. Yeah, I made a good IAF level and only got 3 likes over the span of several months. I don't know what to say. That just sucks. There's just so many unknown creators. Like, I just don't know what to say. That just must be so annoying to never, ever, ever get stuff featured and stuff, because, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm friends with a person who has, like, a few featured levels, kinda cool. Okay, here's this. Lol. I am assuming you slide. Yeah, I can cheese this. Ha! Yeah, you can totally cheese these levels. I don't know if you ever played this level, but it's... Okay, I'll check. I'll check it after I do PewDiePie Slave, and then I'll do that one, see if I have played it. Yeah, dude, that's how you cheese it. You can actually go under spikes. So if you make a mini wave slide, you can actually go under normal spikes. So it's really cheap, but it's really funny. Like, did you see that? Well, here, I'll get a better example of it. I just kind of want to show this super quickly. Okay, I just kind of need to tap super quickly. So you saw that? I just slid under the spike. Okay, interesting though. Okay, great. Easy. Punt it. I think I may have seen it.
Check that level you said was 3 stars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I saw this, but I didn't see the full level. This is really good. I don't think I ever saw the full level, but it is amazing.
Free 9-star courtesy. Cool, free coins.
I know, exactly.
55 on this before. Is this like a map pack level?
I don't know.
Because if so, that would be pretty epic.
Yeah, because then there would be no way RobTop would be able to take it down from the servers, because then you wouldn't be able to beat the map pack, I'm assuming. Or something like that. Some weird thing would probably happen. Dude. Honestly, favorite. One comment. Okay, everyone, send this level to everyone you know. Send it to mods. Let's get this.
I'm scared.
Sorry.
Cool, I got 3 stars.
I'm gonna play it right now. Yeah, it's really good. Divex made it, and honestly, it deserves to be featured so much. It's hard though. Chill. Sorry. I kind of went a bit, crazy. Okay, here we go. This is bad. Okay, time for another one. Not a working ID? Is this a correction of it? Yeah, there isn't. Yeah. Dang it. Oh yeah, I forgot you can't actually jump in that because I made it so you can't, so you don't like glitch up the level by jumping. Yeah, what happens to the whole jump? Oh god. What? I don't think that's ever happened. I never noticed that. That's so weird. Did you just see that? Hang on.
Me?
Yeah, hang on, I'm just asking this stream more like. Why did that happen? It's not happening anymore.
What the heck? Your cube is being weird.
I know, if I hold down jump here. So since there's like invisible like H blocks, to like stop me from jumping up. If I hold down click, it does that occasionally. But oh, there, I got it working for a second there. That's super weird. But it only happens occasionally. Damn it. This stuff will be poopy. I give up. Yeah, I don't think anybody's really seen this level too much. There's no comments. It's just kind of like some slight updates that are almost unnoticeable to Spooky Sierra Skeletons layout that I made ages ago. I've been making slow updates to it, and who knows, maybe one day I'll add structures to it. Wait, Sir Gillister? The man himself also resets the window, god damn it. Nothing. Oh, never mind, it's an older level. Wait, I gotta reset the window, guys, sorry. So it actually takes up all the screen. Okay, we're good. Play Hungry Humphrey? Maybe?
Oh no.
Whoa. Wait, what? Wait, this ID though? What? Huh? You say Sir Gillister wrong? Do I?
Yo, I don't know how he's supposed to.
Yeah, I just pronounced it Gillister. That's interesting. It's like a... That's so weird. He must have updated it. Play Hungry Humphrey? Okay, yeah, I'll play it. Wait, what? Wait, is this story 1? 6 years old ago. Yeah, this isn't the right one. What? Did he misspell it? Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, he did. I was just about to say, imagine if I beat... Okay, I'm back. I was baking some salmon. That's epic. What's funny, I actually just had salmon tonight, so that's pretty funny. But I was just about to say, what if I beat this first attempt and instantly dies? What? No, I guess. Okay. Okay, there. Oh my god. Just throwing off my creativity? Okay, after I do this, yeah, I'll totally check it out.
Yeah.
God, I forgot how creepy his face is. I forgot. You'll just ever forget for Sir Geister? Sir Geister. That's an interesting way to pronounce it, but okay. Y'all ever just kind of forget that Hungry Humphrey is creepy as hell? Another triple. Ooh! That's pretty cool. I like the triple. Also good song, to be honest. Easy. I swear to God! Stop spamming mouths! The mouths. Oh, it's supposed to be hungry. No, never mind. It's not supposed to be hungry. Humphrey. He has a cigarette. Okay, guys, we're gonna beat it. It's been a while. Dude, look at that FPS tank. From like 140 to like 90. Instantly. Okay, Mr. Decoy? Decoy? I don't really know how to pronounce that, but I'll do your level after I do this, you know, level that exists, and I kind of forgot it exists. No. Please no. Okay, I forgot. How did he even find the song?
By eating Cookie Pookie and the Hi Pie.
Hi pie. You said hi pie at the end.
Yeah.
Here we go. He wants a party, boys. I was headbanging too hard.
So after I beat this level, I'm gonna go for a little bit to watch
Biohazard.
episodes of Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, do not give me any spoilers, please!
I am not going.
I'm like still on episode 1. Oh god.
So, did you like the first episode?
I haven't even like, yeah, it's pretty good. I liked it, but I watched like half of it. I still haven't watched. I still haven't gotten to it. I'm just kind of lazy. Even though yeah, I literally sit down and watch it. You know, whatever.
It's pretty kooky, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean by cookie? I mean cookie.
Oh! What's that sound? I don't like it. This is a hard level. I don't like it. Well, I do like it. It's an interesting level, but I mean, like, you know, it's hard as in it's. I don't.
Save yourself there, Jet.
Please. Okay, it's a bit weird. The decoration is a bit weird. If you could really call it decoration. Okay, interesting, but difficult. El bug.
Dude, I looked at this guy's like post. He has 1 demon completed in 2,611 stars. He's like, currently trying to be my first extreme demon. So far I've gotten 28% after 55,000 attempts. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't think you should be doing an extreme demon after beating 1 demon that probably is like club step. I'm going from club step to silent club step because, you know, they have the same name.
Also, why did I click on this?
Okay, I'll be back.
Oh,
Go watch Chow.
bow! Bow?
Watch people exist.
Bye.
Are you gonna be on later?
Yeah, probably. Hopefully.
Yeah!
Bruh. Okay, you wanna know what? I'm probably gonna end the stream about here. So, you'll be the last request. You will be the last request. Left to cry. Okay. Play any level called I'm Gonna Push You Down. Okay, I'll do that. Wait, I have 87% of close up after 5 demons on 60 hertz. Yeah. No, wait, boy. Whoa, this is really good. Okay, dude, this is a really good level. Dude, this is really good. Okay, I'll play a bit more. Yeah, this is remarkable. This is amazing decoration. I like it. Ooh. Dude, this is really cool. But now we're gonna do any level called I'm gonna push you down. I'm going to assume it's like, I'm gonna push you down the stairs. Wait. Yeah.
I'm gonna push you down to the stairs.
That's a pretty good one. It's going to my favorites.
I'm gonna push you down to the stairs.
It's pretty good. Okay. I'll play this last level and this will be it. So, yeah. I will! Easy. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I'm gonna push you down the stairs. I have Lenny, okay. That's pretty amazing. Wait, hang on, that's the background. I'm missing, yeah, background stalls. Okay, hope, enjoy, stream. Okay, bye.